Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight. This is a full house. It's a bit warm. I might take my jacket, which I brought especially for you guys. But
I thought it was for me.
well, for you as well, of course. So anyway, I'll keep it as long as I can. This film, Ben, you wrote the text. It's directed by a female Iranian film director, Mitra Tabrizian. And so I want to come to you first. You were brought up in London, but also in Nigeria. And so I'd like you to tell us the first time you read The Outsider, because I think we all remember the time when we read The Outsider. And your reaction to it, and why, as an adult and as a poet and playwright, you wanted to adapt it to the stage.
Well, I first read The Outsider when I came to England, to London to study. And I read it around 1978 when I was doing my, what should I call it? My private education in the great literatures of the world. And I read my way through practically everything I could find in all the languages, and in English and in the languages I could read. And L'Étranger was one of the books I read in a little bedsit in South London. And in some extraordinary way, it coincided with my mood. The sense of isolation, I suppose. But actually, to be honest with you, it was the beauty of the language, the seduction of the language, and the warmth, the strange cold warmth of its philosophy. And it's a kind of book that when you read it very early, it sort of refuses to leave you. There are books that make a really big impact on your mind. Sometimes they shift your character. Books like Don Quixote, some books of Dostoevsky, slightly alter your character, probably make it truer. But this is a book that kind of speaks to what's youngest in you, what's most strangely rebellious in you. It was a very weird time to read it, and at the same time was the most perfect time. And I read it over again over the years. I read Camus' essays because I found them very moving. But then when you begin to read around the edges of the literature, and then you read it in relation to my own context as an African writer in Britain, the book sort of changes. It now takes on a completely different quality. And I've had those two aspects of the book running side by side in my spirit all these years. This book that's exquisitely well written, modulating a very, very fine philosophy. And this other book, which is one of those central books about the colonial and the post-colonial struggles and questions. And why did I want to make a play of it? I was fascinated by it. And I saw a film of L'Étranger, which was deeply troubling because it reminded me of apartheid in South Africa, and the book hadn't done that. And I was struck by the gap between the seduction of what happens with words on a page and what happens when you see the thing visualized for you.
Can I bring
Yes.
Kamel into the conversation? I asked the same question, actually. I mean, I was struck when I saw your film, Ben. It brought me back to that moment I myself read L'Étranger. Kamel, when did you read L'Étranger? How old were you? Where were you? What was your first reaction?
Okay, thank you. C'est une question qu'on me pose souvent. Quand est-ce j'ai lu L'Étranger, parce que je suis algérien. Donc il est supposé que je l'ai lu la première fois en colère, ce qui n'est pas vrai. C'est un roman qui m'a ennuyé. Je pense que rarement on a atteint ce stade-là où on a fabriqué du génie avec de l'ennui. Donc la littérature suspend le jugement. Quand on lit une œuvre, c'est qu'on est au-delà du bien et du mal. Et donc, ce roman, je ne l'ai pas lu avec colère à l'âge de 22 ans. Il ne m'a pas beaucoup plu. J'ai aimé plus La Chute, Caligula, que L'Étranger de Camus. fonctionne.
Non,
Non, il fonctionne.
Ça fonctionne.
Ok, d'accord. Oui, donc c'est donc sorry. So it's a question. I don't know. Like, am I really like? Yeah. Okay. Bon. Okay. Donc, so yeah. So when I read whether I read The Outsider or when or and what I felt about it is a question that is often put to me because I'm Algerian. So it's sort of almost taken for granted that I have read it and that maybe I was sort of I rebelled against it or I was angry at it. But in fact, the reality of it is that when I first read it, I was 22 and I found it quite boring. And it was almost like there was a sort of genius created out of ennui. And I sort of tried to go beyond, so I didn't try to go beyond that. This is really what I felt.
Généralement, on ne lit pas pour se convaincre, on lit pour se débarrasser de ses convictions, en règle générale. Donc la lecture de l'étranger ne s'est pas faite par un décolonisé. C'était juste quelqu'un qui était à la recherche du plaisir de lire et de s'évader. Il n'y a rien de politique dans la lecture de l'étranger pour un Algérien.
So basically, when you sort of write, you're trying to sort of. It's not about like sort of convincing yourself. It's about going beyond your convictions. But in effect, this novel wasn't written by someone who sort of went through decolonization. It was written by someone who was looking for the pleasure of writing and maybe evading, but not by someone who was like from decolonization.
Je pense que c'est une réponse qui est parfois décevante pour une partie de l'opinion intellectuelle occidentale. Je n'ai pas été en colère.
And it can be quite a disappointing sort of statement, but I wasn't angry at it.
Well, I can share very quickly. I was 15 when I read it. It was compulsory reading in French schools. And I hated it. But I had such a strong reaction. I later understood that was simply because I was confronting what literature was about. I hated the lack of empathy of the main character. I just couldn't understand somebody like this existed. And I haven't reread it because I want to keep that first reaction. Perhaps much later I will read it again. So we have 3 different reactions, and I'm sure there are many more in the room to the actual reading of L'Étranger. But so let's perhaps go back to your Ben's adaptation to the theatre and also to your book, your first novel, Kamel, Meursault Contre-enquête, Meursault Investigation, which was translated into 41 languages. And what I lost the thread of my thought. Yes, I will. Yes, because we talked about you as young men, your first reaction to the novel, and then afterwards, both of you wanted to give a voice to the voiceless. That is to say, this man who was murdered in the book on the beach, and who doesn't even have a name. And you went about it differently, both of you. So, Ben, first, I remember reading that your first reaction was to go and meet Camus' daughter, Catherine, I think, because you had a clear idea about what you wanted to write. Can you tell us about how what happened during that meeting and how you had to change tack?
Well, it's not that I had a clear idea what I wanted to write. It's that, when you're adapting a novel, a very famous and a great novel, actually, onto the stage, you have to deal with the impossible reality of the visual presence. You cannot get away with it. And so you have this stage, you have all these white characters, and then you have these Algerian characters, and the Algerian characters don't speak. And it's a problem. It really is. It's a visual, theatrical problem. One could make something of it, but the more we rehearsed, it became clear that something had to be done. And I thought we should go see Catherine and see if she would allow some kind of deviation to the text, to allow the Algerian character to speak, to actually have a kind of a dramatic dynamics on the stage. It would have made for greater drama. I can't think of any great play where an important character who's killed does not speak, not even in Shakespeare. I simply cannot think of one. So we made this great journey with Anna Winters, the artistic director of the Coronet, to go and meet Catherine, and we met her in a cafe with her back against the wall, and we presented our case that it's important that the characters speak, and I've devised some words, and it's not going to deviate too much from etc. etc. I was halfway through it, and she said, no. It was very simple. So we'd made that long journey for nothing, and we came back.
But did she explain her?
Yes, she
why
did.
She said no?
Yes, she did. She said she wanted to be faithful to her father's book, and I respect that. I hope my daughter does the same thing. So she was defending a legacy with a sword, a drawn sword. And we came back, and what we decided to do was we decided that, well, we're going to respect what she said, but we're at the same time going to honor the fact that we wanted to give a voice to, as you said, the voiceless. So with Mitra, who is here in the audience with us, we made a film about the other side, which we call The Insider. And the film was shown in a separate part of the theater. So you see the film, and then you went and you saw the play. And that way you had a kind of a cocktail of the whole experience.
Kamel, I forgot to ask you, that's why I was a bit lost for words for a moment. You wanted to react before I asked you the same question about how you gave a voice to the nameless character in Camus' novel. You wanted to react to Ben's film and to... absolutely. And to the voice which you heard and which shocked you.
Ah, d'accord. Une réaction par rapport au film. Très bien. Pour être sincère, j'ai trouvé le texte très très bon. Je pense que c'est un texte formidable qui traduit vraiment l'émotion de la victime et qui met des mots sur le silence. Mais en même temps, le concept était très amusant pour moi.
So first off, I want to say that I thought the text was very beautiful. That it's a great text because it sort of gives emotion to the victim, and it's also sort of put words on silence.
Ce qui était amusant, c'est que l'arabe parlait arabe, alors qu'en Algérie, personne ne parle arabe.
What's funny is that the character, the protagonist, sort of speaks Arabic, but in fact, in Algeria, nobody speaks Arabic.
Comme dans le reste du monde arabe.
Like in the rest of the world, in the Arabic world.
La réalité, c'est que la langue de la victime aurait pu être une tragédie. C'est-à-dire que la langue algérienne, elle est en partie composée de mots qu'on dit arabes, d'autres langues, et de français. Donc, il faut imaginer la victime comme si elle avait un corps pour deux personnes. C'est-à-dire, la victime parle arabe et français en même temps. Elle est Meursault et elle est sa victime en même temps. C'est très fascinant.
Okay, so the language actually could have been like a tragedy, meaning that in fact in the sort of language, the Algerian language, so in Algeria and the people who speak Algerian, they have actually a language where there is like some Arabic words, but also some French words. So in fact, it's as if the victim has one body for two people. So you're both Meursault and the victime.
Donc les choses ne sont claires que vues de l'extérieur, c'est-à-dire un arabe n'est un arabe que lorsqu'il est vu par un occidental ou lorsqu'il est mort.
sorry. So yeah. So like, sorry. Can you repeat?
Un arabe n'est un arabe que lorsqu'il est vu par un occidental ou
Yeah.
lorsqu'il est mort.
Yeah. Okay. So someone from the Arabic world is only someone from the Arabic world when he's seen from the sorry. I'm getting lost now. From the West, or if he's dead. Sorry. I'm getting.
C'est très drôle, c'est-à-dire qu'il y a une mise en abîme, c'est-à-dire qu'il y a encore un effacement dans l'effacement. C'est comme si on était deux fois morts, parce qu'on n'est pas raconté dans notre propre langue.
So basically, there is this feeling of sort of disappearing. So it's like it's second disappearing, and it's like a second death. You're dead twice because you don't really have a voice.
I'm sure, Ben, you want to react to this because you were brought up in 3 languages. I mean, your parents, tell us about that.
No, I was brought up in at least 4 languages, and in Nigeria we've got more than 300 languages. And language is the big issue. If we go into language, we're not going to end this conversation. It's one of the most complex issues to do with writing, literature, identity throughout Africa. So we're not going to go there. As far as the film is concerned, I'm sorry you feel that way, Kamel, because we just wanted to give some kind of a voice to this person. With Mitra, I wrote the text, so I wasn't really responsible for how it gets translated into the languages. But we felt that it was better that there was some kind of speech than that I got into the infinite subtleties of the particular problems involved with the production that was going to happen and then disappear after 3 weeks. Really?
I understand.
But the other thing I wanted to say about the play, the novel and the play, which I think is really important, I want to stress it, is that there's something about the novel which is inherently theatrical, which I did not see when I first read it. It's only when I started to adapt it that I realized that actually Camus was a secret playwright. It's very, very important to understand these things in the same way that to appreciate the richness of something like Don Quixote, you need to understand that Cervantes had written more than 20 plays. And that's why his dialogue, his long speeches, have the kind of beauty and the flow and the sometimes the contradiction, the theatrical contradiction that they have. So I was interested in many buried aspects of Camus that came out in the novel, and the playwright was one of them.
Non, ce que je voulais dire aussi, le texte était formidable, mais c'était juste une réaction d'un Algérien par rapport à cette mise en abîme des langues. 2 remarques. La première, c'est que je crois que Camus est un écrivain du monologue absolu. Et ça en dit beaucoup de choses sur sa philosophie, sur sa condition philosophique et sur son écriture.
Okay, so no, of course. So I want to stress the fact that I did think that the text was very beautiful, but I just felt like as an Algerian, I felt maybe a bit deprived of my own voice, and also I would say that first and foremost, Camus is a writer, like a monologue writer, and we talk a lot about his philosophy, but it's like first and foremost like a monologue writer.
Un jour, pour l'anecdote, j'avais assisté à une adaptation du roman Meursault Contre-enquête en pièce de théâtre à Munich. Et c'était fait par un Iranien et j'ai trouvé le concept très émouvant.
Okay, so I saw the adaptation of Meursault, the investigation in Munich, and it was done by an Iranian playwright, and I thought it was very moving.
Le concept était très simple. Il a pris les 8 personnages des 2 romans et chaque personnage parlait une langue. L'un parlait hollandais, l'autre le français, la mère parlait le persan, le mort parlait le français, l'anglais. Et donc, parfois, on avait des rencontres entre 2 personnages ou même un seul personnage selon les âges, mais qui parlait des langues différentes. Et c'était très profond et très émouvant. Je crois que ça résume beaucoup de choses.
So what I found the concept interesting because actually, so he took 8 characters and each character spoke a different language. So you had some Dutch, some French, some Farsi, English, and so I don't have all the and then so sometimes you had these dialogues or sometimes just a monologue from one person in one language, and I thought that was very moving.
Kamel, we haven't really talked about your book, which you will be signing after our talk. Meursault contre-enquête, Meursault the Investigation. It's your first novel. Had it been brewing inside of you for a very long time? What was the incentive to give? Because now it looks as if we cannot read The Outsider without reading then your book. As a sort of, it's become a sort of mirror. Why giving a voice to the nameless? Share with us that process.
Je ne pense pas qu'on écrive des romans avec des idées. Je pense qu'on les écrit avec des nécessités. C'est très différent.
So I don't think you write novels with ideas. You write novels out of necessities.
I'll tell that to the existentialists. People like Sartre, many of them wrote from ideas, and it's possible to write from ideas. I think it's important to stress that it is possible to write a whole novel from ideas. It depends on whether, as T.S. Eliot says, ideas for you are tactile or not.
Je pense qu'on peut choisir son hôtel, on peut choisir son oreiller, on peut choisir son lit, mais on ne choisit pas son rêve.
I think you can choose your hotel, your bed, your pillow, but you can't choose your dream.
So what was the necessity?
I'm not sure about that. I've chosen many dreams.
We have not the same bed, I think.
We don't have the same hotel either.
Je pense que cette histoire devait être écrite tôt ou tard, mais on aurait pu imaginer le roman écrit par un Japonais, par exemple. Est-ce que ça aurait eu le même sens? Je pense qu'il y a des histoires qui sont là, qui flottent, et qui, à un moment, s'imposent d'elles-mêmes. À un moment, j'ai même eu l'envie d'écrire un roman sur cette question-là. Pourquoi j'ai écrit ce roman-là? Parce qu'on me la pose partout dans le monde. Et je crois que les raisons, plus on passe du temps, plus on prend de l'âge, plus on découvre que les raisons qui nous ont menés à écrire un livre vont beaucoup plus loin que ce qu'on affirme.
Okay, so basically, I suppose the story was sort of brewing inside me, and that it had to be told. Or it was a story that was brewing somewhere, and it could maybe have been written by a Japanese person. But then, would it have had the same meaning? So I think some stories become actually something that have to come out at some point, and I even thought about writing a book or something about the reason why I had written this book, because a lot of people are asking me that around the world. But I think maybe it's with age and time that sort of it came to fruition, and then I wanted to go beyond that, that question.
C'est-à-dire, c'est comme lorsqu'on vous demande quels sont les écrivains qui vous ont le plus influencé dans la vie. Quand vous êtes jeune, vous choisissez James Joyce, mais avec l'âge, vous allez comprendre que c'est quelqu'un d'autre de moins connu.
It's a bit like when you're asked, who was most influenced you as a writer, which writer influenced you? Like when you're young, you're going to say James Joyce, but then later on, maybe you're going to find that it's someone else.
Donc je pense qu'il y a plusieurs raisons derrière un roman. Je pense que parce que je suis algérien, donc j'ai pensé à cette histoire-là qui raconte comment un homme ne peut pas sortir du passé, comment il est assigné au rôle d'être une victime permanente aux yeux de sa mère, aux yeux du mort, aux yeux des autres. Aussi, c'était la première raison.
So, I would say that maybe one of the main reasons why I wrote this book is primarily because I'm Algerian, probably, and also I wanted to write about how a man gets stuck as a victim, in the role of a victim, gets stuck in the past, and is seen that way, and only that way, by others.
Deuxième raison que j'ai trouvée, c'est que j'ai grandi dans un village où je n'avais pas accès aux livres. Donc les livres, généralement, j'en avais 2 ou 3 sur l'année. Je les relisais sans cesse et je fantasmais sur les titres. Vous savez, à la fin, quand il y a apparaître ou déjà paru, et donc je construisais des livres sur des livres qui n'existaient pas. Ça peut être une explication aussi.
Also, maybe one of the second reason that I can think of is the fact that I grew up in a village where I had a very limited access to books. Maybe I had only a couple a year, and I would read them and reread them, and I would also fantasize about titles, and also like at the end, like to be published, or like so I would sort of imagine all these stories that were to be published or to come.
On peut creuser plus profond, on peut aller sur l'histoire personnelle. J'ai perdu un frère dont je ne me souviens pas du visage, donc peut-être aussi que ça s'est remonté. Je ne sais pas si on peut définir les raisons propres qui nous poussent à écrire un livre. On peut glosser sur ça, on peut parler pendant des années, on peut se mentir, mais je pense que ce n'est pas important. Ce qui est important, c'est ce que pense le lecteur et quelle histoire lui-même il investit dans ce livre-là. C'est le plus important.
So maybe like another reason would be that I lost a brother whose face I don't even remember. I think it's quite difficult to really describe and to tell the different reasons that really push you to write. Why do you write? I think you can sort of lie to yourself and sort of invent things or reasons, but that's not important in the end.
Je crois qu'à la fin, c'est quelque chose de très difficile à admettre, mais finalement, le lecteur est beaucoup plus intelligent que l'écrivain.
So it's something that is very difficult to admit, but in the end, the reader is more intelligent than the writer.
So,
I wanted
yes.
to say something that's been on my mind about l'étranger. I think we're in danger in this conversation of reducing l'étranger to one thing, when in fact it's about many things. And I think if we're going to talk about its anniversary, it is to, of course, deal with that aspect that has to do with the colonial, but then I think we should also pay tribute to the other aspects of the work as well, which is about literature, which is about the ambiguity of writing itself. And I also want to add that since my conversation with Catherine, with Camus' daughter, I've been thinking about l'étranger a lot, and I very much shared for many years the anti-colonial attitude towards the book. But the more I think about it from a writer's point of view, from a craftsman's point of view, and you think about this character who's telling his own story in the first person, within his character, what he writes about, as far as he's able to write, is true. And that too has to be placed into the dialogue that we're having. Alongside the anti-colonial dialogue, there's a dialogue of the character's truth, no matter how unpleasant it might be to us. And we have many parallels of this in South African literature, where you have white South African characters who, in the same way, do not see the African presences in the land. But it's true to their experience.
It's their stories,
yeah,
as well. Kamel, do you want to react to this? Okay. So we have very little time left, and I would like to give at least one or two questions to the room. So we're talking about Camus, but it is also the 60th anniversary of the independence of Algeria. And you talked to us when we were discussing before the start of our conversation that for a very long time you didn't want your book, Kamel, to be made into a film. You got a lot of a lot of offers, and you eventually agreed. And it's being shot, and it will probably be released next year. And tell us why you chose the film director, because I think it has an echo with the Algerian history.
Pour une raison d'âge, je voulais quelqu'un qui ne soit pas porteur du discours décolonial permanent. J'ai voulu un regard vivant, un regard du présent. Donc je voulais quelqu'un qui ne soit pas anachronique, c'est-à-dire qui soit dans une sorte d'injonction. Vous savez, le discours décolonial est très puissant dans nos pays et c'est une injonction très violente. Et si vous vous opposez, vous êtes dans la figure du traître. Donc je voulais quelqu'un de jeune. Je voulais quelqu'un qui ne soit pas mort ou qui ne joue pas à être quelqu'un de mort, ce qui est très difficile parfois.
And tell us the name of the film director.
C'est Malek Ben Smaïl.
Who
C'est
is
un franco-algérien.
Franco-Algerian
Oui.
and is what, born in the 70s?
I think, yeah.
Okay, so the reason, I mean, one of the main reason why I chose this Malek Ben Smail, this director, was about his age. Because I wanted someone who wasn't sort of deep down into the decolonialism, wasn't so sorry, who wasn't so marked by the decolonialism, and so I wanted someone who was bringing a new take on things, someone present, and I didn't want, also because like you have to be careful when you do sort of if you're going to go into that territory, like you can be seen as a traitor. So I think for me, I didn't want someone who was dead. I really wanted someone who was alive and was bringing this new take.
Ben, do you like to respond to that?
No.
No. Okay. So perhaps we can have a few questions from the room. Matthias has a mic for...
Maybe you can tell us your first reading of Camus.
Exactly.
No, I just wanted to... What did you mean by when speaking about Meursault's truth? I didn't really understand. What would you say about would it be the truth of his character or just the truth of what he represented?
The truth of his telling. The truth of his telling of the story. Because the whole novel is an incredible... the whole novel is a sleight of hand. It's a magician's trick. It really is. It's told with incredible economy. And the economy is, well, the way I've encountered it, not all the way. The first part has that economy. The second part is more Proustian. But it's written with such economy. And there are very few novels in which the voice of the character is so stamped on the quality of the narration. You can't weave around his voice. There are many novels you can weave around the voice. You can see around the bends of the character. You can somehow see outside of them. But his command of his world through the telling is total. It's almost tyrannical and seductive at the same time. And that's what I mean by his truth. He tells his story with that kind of authority and that kind of simplicity, that kind of truth. So the implication for me in terms of what he calls the Arab character is that because of his telling and the way he sees the world, he clearly would not be interested in the character's name from inside of his telling.
Kamel, do you want to add something to that?
Il y a beaucoup de choses à dire sur l'étranger. On finit par y réfléchir souvent, ça devient une obsession. Je crois que c'est une histoire très humaine. C'est l'histoire qui répond à une question très simple. Qu'est-ce qu'on doit faire avec l'autre? Est-ce qu'on doit le tuer, le convertir, l'accueillir chez soi, se marier avec lui, faire semblant qu'il n'existe pas, le laisser se noyer? C'est la question de l'altérité. C'est qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec l'autre? On la voit dans Robinson Crusoe, on la voit dans Vendredi le lame du Pacifique de Michel Tournier, on la voit... Au fond, les romans, qu'est-ce qu'ils racontent? Ils racontent la rencontre avec l'autre et la réponse qu'on apporte à cette question-là, qu'est-ce qu'on fait de l'autre? C'est le plus important. Tout le reste, c'est une question de croyance. On croit rencontrer un Dieu, mais on est sûr de rencontrer un être humain. Ça a des exigences. Donc, un roman, c'est finalement ça. C'est l'histoire d'une rencontre.
So I start by the end. Like, so basically, the novel is about an encounter. But first off, like there are several things that you can say about the outsider, and the more you talk about it, the more it becomes an obsession. But it's first and foremost something that is very human, and the basic question, so to speak, of the novel or writing a novel is what do we do with the other? Do we marry the other? Do we kill kill the other? Do we try and convert the other? So it made me think of the Robinson Crusoe, for example. So really, what a novel is really like an encounter with the other, and then obviously comes beliefs. But you may think that you may meet a god, but you may think about a god, but you will meet for real a human being.
Another question? Or does somebody... I see a lot of young faces. You must have read The Outsider. Do you want to share it?
So you talk about the truth. Do you find that it was justified or was it absurd?
Which truth are you talking about?
L'étranger, his philosophy. The way he chooses to approach life.
I mean, which he are you talking about? Are you talking of
Meursault.
Camus or Meursault?
Meursault.
Well, that's the thing about a person's truth. How can one say whether it's absurd or not when they've managed to persuade you over 150 pages that it is real?
Oh, so he did manage to persuade you?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why it's literature. That's why we're still talking about it.
Kamel?
Je n'ai pas de réponse. Je crois que, encore une fois, je reviens à cette question de est-ce qu'il a bien agi ou pas, si j'ai bien compris la question. C'est un univers où il n'y a pas de mal, où il n'y a pas de bien. C'est un univers où il y a une indécision profonde. C'est-à-dire, c'est un homme qui est solitaire, qui a perdu le goût de l'autre, qui a perdu le désir du monde. Vous vous rendez compte, il est en Méditerranée, il nage avec une très belle femme, il ne la désire pas. Il se promène, il a une très belle vie, il n'a aucune raison de... C'est un homme... Il y a un personnage dans L'étranger de Camus qui est extraordinaire. Si vous avez lu le roman, si vous vous en rappelez, c'est cette femme automate qui refait les mêmes choses. Je crois que c'est un des véritables autoportraits de Meursault. C'est lorsqu'on vit dans un monde qui n'a plus de sens, qui n'a plus de signification. C'est pour ça qu'ils se sentent étrangers, je crois. Enfin, je dis des banalités, mais bon.
So, about the truth and the action, there is no real sort of evil or good action, but there is mostly indecision. And it's about someone who is very alone and solitary and who lost any pleasure in life. So can you imagine, he swims with a woman whom he doesn't even desire. He has a nice life, but still he has lost pleasure in life. So it's a bit like this character, this sort of automat woman who just sort of repeats, and so it's this person, this character is a bit of a portrait of a mirror portrait of Meursault. Sorry.
C'est étrange. Dans L'étranger de Camus, le seul moment où Meursault s'emporte, c'est quand il rencontre le prêtre. Tout le reste lui est indifférent, sauf la question de Dieu.
Interesting is the fact that Meursault has a sort of doesn't really show any empathy for many things, but when the priest come and talk to him, then he gets really angry. So that's when God comes in. God comes in.
So that was a great moment in our production, but in my play, yeah. But. When you really look at the novel very carefully, there are many contradictions inside it. And I think Camus succeeds in conveying through Meursault this detached attitude to life. But when you read the text really carefully, here is somebody who loves details. That for me is already explosive, because the love of details is consciousness of the presence of things. He loves details. He loves describing the evenings when people are coming back from the cinema, or those Sunday afternoons when nothing appears to be happening. He describes life from his balcony. Those descriptions, those moments when he describes life, that's not detached. That's almost a lyrical attachment to life. So there are many contradictions inside this book, which I think Camus, outside of the book, speaking of the philosophy of the character, has managed to persuade us to feel about the book, when in fact it's not entirely true of the book, because people would not love the book that much if it did not have certain elements of sensual delight, as well as a very quiet, maybe even muted feeling for life itself.
I think we're going to have to end it here because some of you go to the cinema.
Maybe one last question?
One last question.
A lot of pressure on you.
I'll do my best.
Thank you. The question to Kamel, in light of your very strong reaction to the use of Arabic in the film, how did you feel about the Arabic translation of your novel and the way that that circulated and was received?
Qu'est-ce que je pense de la traduction en arabe de mon livre? Moi, je pense qu'elle est très bonne. C'est les Algériens qui pensent qu'elle n'est pas très bonne. Parce qu'elle a été faite par des Libanais. Et donc...
Did you choose the translator? Vous avez choisi le traducteur?
He thinks it's a good translation, but Algerians don't think so because it's been done by a Lebanese.
Et donc, actuellement, je sais qu'il y a des gens qui ont approché l'éditeur en Algérie pour proposer d'autres traductions dans un autre arabe.
Some people have approached publishing houses so that the book would be translated in another Arabic.
In which Arabic? Dans quel arabe?
How many Arabics are there?
Yes.
Autant qu'il y a des arabes, il y a une langue arabe. Mais,
There's Arabs.
yeah. Non, ce qu'il voulait dire, c'est que parfois, il y a des métaphores qui échappent à des Libanais par rapport à des Maghrébins. Ce sont des métaphores qui ne sont pas très très bien traduites selon ces gens, selon ces lecteurs.
So it's mostly about like the translation of metaphors. So people think that maybe someone from Lebanon doesn't grasp necessarily well enough some metaphors, and so Algerians sort of reacted against that.
Mon rêve, c'est de voir un jour Meursault contre-enquête traduit en algérien.
So my dream would be to see Meursault Investigation translated in Algerian.
Ce sera une véritable résurrection du mort.
So it would be a real resurrection of the
Et
dead.
pourquoi pas le faire, vous?
I thought that's how you wrote it.
Non, je l'écris en français.
Right.
I wrote it in
Il
French.
fallait que le meurtre soit parfait quand même.
The murder had to be perfect.
But Kamel, why don't you write it in Algerian?
Parce que la langue dans laquelle...
Because that would have solved all of the problems.
Non. Yeah, but je ne serais pas été là. Donc...
I wouldn't have been here if I had already written.
Non, je pense que la langue française pour moi, c'est la langue dans laquelle je rêve, dans laquelle j'écris. C'est une langue de liberté pour moi. C'est très scandaleux de dire ça dans un champ de décolonisation. Mais, parce qu'il est supposé que c'est la langue de l'ennemi, mais moi je suis né trop tard.
So basically, French is the language in which I dream, and for me, it's freedom. It's about freedom, and it might come across as quite scandalous to people, to like in the context of decolonization. But this is the fact.
Un jour, c'était une révélation dans ma vie. On en a souvent dans la salle de bain ou dans un musée. J'étais dans un musée, le peintre Dürer, l'allemand. Il y avait une lettre qui était sous glace et ils avaient les écouteurs qui traduisaient et qui disait cette phrase qui m'avait bouleversé profondément. Il disait, pour le moment, j'ai écrit en latin, un de ses correspondants, parce que notre langue n'est pas assez riche pour traduire mes émotions, mais cela viendra.
So I had like often in life. Sorry, this is me. You have revelations. It might be in your bathroom or in a museum. In this case, it was in a museum. I was looking at a letter written by Dürer, and I had the description through the earphones, and then he wrote that he was writing to his friend, or the correspondence was, I write in Latin because at the moment our language isn't detailed enough to describe all my emotions, but it will come.
Perfect ending to our conversation. Thank you so much for coming, and to Kamel and Ben.